Welcome to the Advanced Functionality and Optimization tutorial video for Mega Menu. This is the last video in the series where we cover some more advanced topics and how to get the most speed out of your website. So let's get straight into it. Now, on the Advanced tab for the block, I'll explain some of these fields. Under Page Links, we have Page Link URL Format. There's two options here depending on how you want to manage links within your menu. You can either have the full URL, which includes a domain name, or a relative URL. If you look at the tooltip, it gives you an example, such as https://mysite.com/about. That's the full URL. Or if you only want to have relative, you can. It might depend on how you're handling domains with your website. If you have multiple domains and forwarders pointing to the same domain, then that can be a factor in choosing which one. If you're not sure, or you just got one single domain used by your website, then full URL is probably the best way to go. It uses the concrete canonical URL setting. So if you click on that, that will take you to the dashboard page where you can set that if you haven't done it already. All right, next let's have a look at layout. This is actually a setting I forgot to mention in the previous video, but I'll throw it in here. And this is the drop-down column width and alignment. And this applies to auto mega menus. I'll give you an example of what this looks like. By default, we have the column stretch horizontally. So I will head over here to extended menu. Organization I know is a auto mega menu, and I'm going to have a look at how that looks when I try to make the drop down the full length. Okay, yeah, you can see we've got three columns like I've selected, and it uses up and stretches across the full available space, which in this case is the full nav width. Now I'll show you an alternative. We'll head back to Advanced and Layout, and this time we'll choose, you can have a fixed width either at the beginning, center, or end. I'll choose center for now. And the fixed width it's talking about is the same fixed width that is on a standard drop down. So you see here under About, that drop down is a certain kind of width. We'll use that same width here. So we've got four columns, but now I've got a bit of space on the left and the right because this is now a fixed width with center alignment. You can also choose to have it left or start aligned and also right or end aligned, depending on how you like your design. All right, next on the Advanced tab, we have the logo section. Here is where we can control the position offset of the logo, both on the vertical axis and horizontal axis. Let's say, for example, I like where my logo is, but I'd just like to move it up a little bit, and I can put in a number here like 0.5 rem, and it will automatically nudge the logo up. You can also do it left to right or start to end, and it will automatically disable this offset at a certain breakpoint. I can choose one of two breakpoints. The reason being is that the menu will collapse into a smaller size and shape at that particular breakpoint automatically, and in that case, then the vertical offset or the horizontal offset won't look the way that you intend, so it disables it. Then next, let's have a look at the style section. This is where you can add any kind of global custom CSS styling. It applies both to the mega menu, but also if you choose to style other elements on the page that are outside of the mega menu, you can do it here. I've used this example where I've created a class called custom_class_example and given it a background color, a border, and that's it. And so I am able to use that in different ways. For example, you might recall from previous videos, it was on the drop-down menu. I'll show you that example now. And under organization, this particular page custom CSS class, I've put that border shading there that you can see. Now, the way I did that was using a page attribute. So over here in the sitemap, click on that page, and there is a custom navigation menu CSS class. And this is the class that I've defined in my global CSS field. So now I've applied this class to that particular page, and that's what gives it the border and the shading. And so if I choose to change that border and shading to anything else, then it will apply anywhere that has been used. In this case, just one example. But if you use the same styling across several menu items, then you can control it all from one spot if you're familiar with CSS. Do keep in mind that a simple styling like this just sets one color, and it won't necessarily be responsive to dark mode. If you want to handle dark mode, then you'll need to put a little bit more code in to do that. There's an important difference between this field and the extend skin CSS. So over on the color tab, we've got here, we talked about this in a previous video, extend skin CSS. So we can take the transparent sky modern skin in this case, and then extend it a little bit further, add some more styling to it without changing the underlying skin. Now this means that this extend skin CSS only takes effect when the modern skin type is selected. If you happen to choose a different one or a custom or something else, then the extend skin CSS won't be activated. However, the global custom CSS will be activated all the time, regardless of any other options that you've got set in Mega Menu. So there is an important distinction between the two. Importantly, it gives you some notes down the bottom. You don't need to include style tags within this. It does that automatically. Okay, next we've got functionality. Similar idea, but this time we're talking about JavaScript. We can add some custom JavaScript if we decide to do just about anything you can think of. If you want to animate something or, change your functionality somehow. 99% of users won't need to use it, but if you do need to do it, this is a handy place to be able to do it. So if I were to type alert, this is Mega Menu, and then if I save that, then you're going to see a pop-up. I mean, slightly outside of the video recording, but you get the idea. Next, we're looking at the fixer section. This is quite simple and straightforward. You can optionally turn on or off a background transparency fix. So what happens is when the hamburger menu is enabled, the whole page slides to the left and right. And if you happen to have a theme that does not have a background color assigned to it, then that could cause a problem, because then there is some overlapping going on with transparency and it doesn't look the way you want it to look. So then this fix can apply a specific background color to the page. Normally you won't have to change it. If you do get stuck on it and you open a support ticket, I'll look at your site and give you some advice whether I think that needs to be used in order to fix it. You can also try it out. It doesn't do any damage. You can turn it off if you don't need it. If I find any particular themes require this, then I can code that into Mega Menu so that they get activated automatically, and then it's completely hands-free. Okay, under developer, we've got one option there to disable the jQuery library. There may be an odd occasion where you're the developer and you created a theme. You've decided to hard code the jQuery library into your theme and you don't want Mega Menu to be able to load it. So then you can choose to disable that if you wish. Okay, let's head over to the dashboard. This is the Mega Menu settings page in the dashboard. I'll explain what each of these fields mean. We've got here a checkbox for cache dynamic JavaScript. So any stat content that is added to the Mega Menu, it's done using JavaScript. And this is operated through an external JavaScript file. Now, you can choose to have this cache so that the Concrete doesn't have to go through the whole process of generating this from scratch every single time. This will help to speed up the site. And most of the time, I'd recommend that you enable that when your site is ready to go live. During development, you can leave it turned off. Now, there becomes a problem that if you've got this content being pulled from stacks, and then you go ahead and modify one of your stacks from the dashboard, then the Mega Menu, which exists on a completely different page, doesn't know about that. So there is a separate checkbox here called Auto Flush JavaScript Cache. And that means that whenever the stack content is updated, then it will automatically flush out the JavaScript cache. Now, most of the time that should work okay, but if you have a very large website with a lot of pages and you don't tend to change your stack content very often, then you might choose to keep this turned off because it may be slowing down the routine every time you save a page. But it depends on your particular situation. You can try it with on and off. It's not going to do any damage. I personally would leave it on for most of the time, but if you've got a very large website with thousands of pages that are updated like every 10 minutes, then that could, possibly slow down your site a little bit, at least at the point where pages are being saved, not when pages are being loaded by a visitor. Okay, we can also choose to cache the dynamic CSS. I would generally recommend that, turning that on when you're ready to go live on your website. There's not really many downsides to it. So as you choose certain options within the Mega Menu block interface, then a external CSS file is created for you, and this is loaded on the fly. Now, rather than having to read through every single setting every single time the page is loaded, you can grab all that and store it temporarily on your server behind the scenes, and then pull that out every time someone loads up a page. That will generally speed things up quite a bit. And the last option, cache navigation menu contents. So if you have a larger website, what happens with Mega Menu, every time a page is loaded, it looks through the entire sitemap. You recall we were just looking at a sitemap before. So imagine the routine. You go through one page to another page, look at all the child pages, so forth, and then build out an entire menu. That can take a little bit of time, especially when you have hundreds or even thousands of pages on your website. So this option will take a snapshot of your page and that all the pages that make up Mega Menu, so that it can store that as well behind the scenes on the server, and then it loads that rather than having to scan through your entire website every time a visitor looks at a page. That will speed things up considerably. This particular case you don't have to worry about. It will automatically flush it when any single page is added, updated, deleted, or moved. While we're at it, let's talk about the cache settings in Concrete. This is a little bit beyond the scope of support for Mega Menu, but because we're talking about speed here, it's very important that you set up your site correctly. And we're really covering some important optimization tips here. So once you've completed building out your website and you're ready to go live, this is the page where you can set your cache and speed settings. I would generally recommend this kind of setup. The overrides cache, we want to turn that on. The block output cache, yes, we want to turn that on. The block output cache, what that does is that Concrete will look at the HTML that's generated from a particular block, take a snapshot of that, and then reuse that again, so it doesn't have to go through the hard work of building out the content from scratch every single time. Now, things can get a bit interesting with the full page caching. So you can either have it off or on if the blocks support it, and on in a forced kind of way for all cases. I would usually recommend this particular one. I don't know if you've got other blocks on your page that do or don't support full page caching. It will vary on a site-by-site basis. But for a basic brochure-style website, generally you should be pretty safe with this and using mostly core blocks. With Mega Menu, it will support full page caching except one particular scenario, and that is if you have the member menu activated. The reason for that is that the logout link must be unique for every single user. So if you take a snapshot of the full page, then everyone's going to be given the exact same logout link, which is not how Concrete works. So if you do choose this and you don't have member menu activated, then it will work quite fine. If you do choose the on in all cases, I highly recommend that you very carefully test your site, all the functionality, all the links, to make sure they work exactly as you expect, especially if there's any places where you have content where people have to log in order to see it, such as a members area. The expiry for the cache is entirely up to you and your preferences, depending on how many visitors you have and how often your content is updated. Every 6 hours is pretty reasonable. If you don't update your content very often at all, like every few months maybe, then this particular option may work well. And then you can choose if you want to respect the block cache lifetime. I would generally leave that on. Depending on the blocks that you have on your website, specifically talking about Mega Menu, it will probably be better to respect and leave it on. But if you really feel the need that you want to force the block cache to work the same length for all pages, you can turn that off. But unless there's a really good reason, I'd leave that on. So when you combine these cache settings along with the Mega Menu caching settings together, that will speed up your website considerably. And that's very important. Mega Menu is built from the ground up to be fast. And speaking of speed, I wanted to give you a few other optimization tips about how to speed up your website. Again, this is a bit beyond the scope of free support that's included with Mega Menu, but I wanted to help you out here. So if this is something that you're not familiar with, it's definitely worth researching and learning more about it. One particular tip is to reduce the page size. And you can do that several ways. One way is to use SVG images where possible instead of JPEG or PNG. If it's for things like icons and animations, basic graphics, diagrams, things like that, SVG is a vector-based image, which means it's made up of lines, it's mathematical, rather than lots of little pixels like PNG and JPEG. If you do have to use JPEG or PNG images, I highly recommend that you compress them heavily on your computer before uploading them to your site. There are several really good free compression tools available on the internet, as well as some web-based tools where you simply upload your image and you can compress the images and save 50 to 70% of the size. If you are adding other images outside of Mega Menu to your site, try to activate the lazy loading option, especially if it's further down the page, because if someone doesn't scroll that far, then it's telling the browser, no need to load this, and it's going to speed up the page loading time. It's also a good idea to avoid pages that are far too long where possible, because the longer and more heavier the page is, the slower it is to load. If you're a theme designer, I suggest considering what CSS library and JavaScript libraries you're including in your theme. The smaller and more nimble, the better. Very large or bloated libraries, such as a full version of Bootstrap, can be very slow. So if you do decide to use Bootstrap, I recommend keeping a customized, slimmed down version of that. Hosting is also very important. If you put the exact same website on two different hosting providers, one is a really high quality server and the other one has cut corners and got a really cheap and nasty one, the loading time is going to be entirely different. So if you do have a website that is important, it does make you money or your clients, please invest in fast, high quality hosting, because you can have all the best setup with Concrete, with Mega Menu, but if the server itself is underpowered, then the website's not going to perform as good as it could. If you haven't already, I would suggest looking into a CDN, a content delivery network like Cloudflare, to reduce your server load and improve the response time for visitors. Cloudflare has a free tier that's easy to set up. You don't have to have any special technical experience. And what it does is it sits in between your visitor and your server so that it takes as many requests as possible and it replies to the visitor for you so that the request doesn't have to always go back to your main server. And as they have a big network of machines all over the world, it means that they're able to be very close geographically to wherever the visitors are. This speeds up that return time. From the time that the visitor requests to view your website, they're able to help respond in a much faster way. When it comes to page loading times, I suggest trying two particular tools. One of them is called WebPageTest.org, and this is an example. I've just done a very quick test on the Concrete CMS.org website. It gives you some important metrics about how fast it loads different components. Please have a look through this in your own time. But in particular, what's really helpful is this waterfall diagram. It is able to break down the sequence in which every element on your page loads and how long it takes for that to load. This makes it very easy to be able to identify bottlenecks in speed that's slowing down your entire website. The other kind of tool you can use is called PageSpeed Insights from Google. And again, you put in a URL at the top and it gives you some important metrics about how it is loading, how fast. So one is the largest contentful paint, that's going at 1.4 seconds in this case. Cumulative layout shift is like how far do the elements on the page jiggle around and move and then shift while the page is loading. The first contentful paint means how quickly does something print up on the screen for the user, and importantly, the time to first byte. So when the visitor initially types in your URL or clicks on a link, then how long does it take to receive a message back from the server? That's where fast hosting will come into it, and a well-optimized server as well. So these are factors that it may be a little bit technical if you're not familiar with this, but it's definitely worth doing some basic reading about it so you have a better understanding about how web pages work in terms of speed, in terms of server optimization, so that you're able to measure and test your performance and see where you fit in amongst your competitors. So in conclusion, Mega Menu is built from over 25 years of experience in web development and online marketing. Attention to detail can be found in every aspect. Every single feature has been carefully thought out, executed, and tested. Mega Menu will equip you to create a more powerful, user-friendly, and intuitive web presence for your business, organization, team, project, or hobby. Congratulations, you've completed the video tutorial series and you're ready to put this knowledge into practice. Feel free to refer back to user guide on c5extras.com at any time and submit a support ticket if you need further help. Have fun building your dream website.